What would happen if Europe suddenly lost access to one of its most critical energy lifelines? A political and economic shockwave is hitting Europe, and the consequences could be historic. Qatar's state-owned energy giant, Qatar Energy, has issued a direct warning to the European Union. CEO Saad Alibi made the message clear. Europe might face a situation where Qatar stops shipping natural gas entirely. The reason behind this threat is a brand new EU environmental law, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, or CSDDD. And make no mistake, this isn't a minor regulation. The law forces large corporations to track their environmental impact all around the world. If they fail, the consequences are severe. Fines can reach up to 5% of a company's total global sales. For a company the size of Qatar Energy, that's billions of dollars at stake just for doing business in Europe. The risk is now too high for them. So the choice Qatar is presenting to Europe is simple: change the law or lose the gas. The stakes for Europe have never been higher. Why is this threat so serious? To understand, we first need to look at Europe's precarious position. After the war in Ukraine began, Europe could no longer rely on its biggest gas supplier, Russia. Before 2022, Russian pipelines supplied over 40% of Europe's total gas needs. That supply is now gone, leaving a massive gap in Europe's energy infrastructure. To survive, Europe turned to liquefied natural gas, or LNG, and Qatar stepped in as a critical partner. Currently, Qatar supplies between 12% and 14% of all LNG Europe uses. It was Qatari gas that allowed Europe to fill its storage tanks to 95% last winter, preventing a total energy disaster. Now, that lifeline is at risk. Europe's own new law threatens to cut off one of its most important energy sources. The irony is clear. A law designed to protect the environment could endanger Europe's energy security. So, what exactly is in this EU law that has Qatar ready to walk away? The Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive was created with a noble goal: to hold large corporations accountable for environmental impacts and human rights issues, not just in Europe, but wherever they operate in the world. Think of it as a mandatory global report card on ethics and sustainability. It requires companies to examine their entire supply chain, from raw materials to the finished product, and fix any problems they discover. But here's where it backfires for energy producers. For an LNG producer like Qatar Energy, this means auditing everything, from gas fields to shipping routes. The cost and complexity of this process are enormous. And if the EU decides their report isn't up to standard, the consequences are massive fines that could reach billions of dollars. A law designed to improve corporate behavior is now ironically threatening Europe's energy stability. So why is Qatar so confident in issuing this warning? It all comes down to a massive strategic gamble. Qatar is investing over $30 billion in the North Field expansion, the largest LNG project in the world. By 2027, this expansion will boost production by a massive 60%. This isn't just a business move, it's a statement. Qatar intends to dominate the global gas market for decades. Natural gas is not just a product for Qatar. It's the foundation of their entire economy, funding the state itself. The EU's new rules directly challenge this model, demanding changes Qatar views as overreach into its national affairs. When Europe presents costly new rules, Qatar looks elsewhere. They have a world of eager buyers, especially in Asia, who aren't asking difficult environmental questions. For Qatar, this is simple business. They've bet $30 billion on their future, and right now that future looks far brighter in the East than in Europe. So where would Qatar's gas go if they leave Europe? The answer is clear: Asia, and this shift is already underway. For years, Asia has been the world's fastest-growing market for natural gas. Countries like China, India, and South Korea need massive amounts of energy to power their growing economies. Unlike Europe, these nations aren't attaching complex environmental rules to energy deals. The proof is in the contracts. Over the past year, Qatar has signed historic 27-year LNG supply deals with major Asian buyers, including China's Sinopec and Total Energies for volumes destined for Asia. These aren't short-term agreements. They're commitments that will last for generations. This is the clearest signal that Qatar isn't bluffing. They are actively building a future around markets that want their gas without regulatory red tape. Europe isn't just risking a supplier, it's pushing that supplier straight into the arms of its economic competitors. And Qatar isn't alone in opposing these EU rules. American LNG producers are standing with Qatar against the directive. The CEO of ExxonMobil has called the EU regulations the most irresponsible legislation I've ever seen. Other US energy leaders have issued similar warnings. If the rules don't change, they will redirect LNG shipments from Europe to Asia as well. This creates a nightmare scenario for European leaders. They're not dealing with a single disgruntled supplier. They're facing a united front from the two largest LNG powerhouses in the world. The United States, once Europe's energy savior, is now openly siding with Qatar. This transforms what may have seemed like a trade disagreement into a major geopolitical crisis that could leave Europe isolated and out in the cold. So, what happens if this perfect storm hits? Energy analysts are modeling a worst-case scenario. If Europe loses Qatari gas, sees reduced American supplies, and continues its Russian gas ban, electricity and gas bills could skyrocket by 400% to 500%. Think about what that means for ordinary people. The average household heating bill could become 5 times more expensive. Industries like manufacturing, chemicals, and fertilizers would struggle to operate profitably. We could see factory shutdowns, massive job losses, and what economists call deindustrialization. Europe's industrial base collapsing under soaring energy costs. This isn't just an energy crisis. It's a direct threat to Europe's economy and the livelihoods of millions. The European Union is already showing signs of backing down. According to recent reports from Brussels, officials are considering a 2-year delay for implementing these sustainability rules in the energy sector, pushing the deadline to 2028. Even more telling, they are considering removing the most controversial part, the massive fines based on a company's global revenue. This was the deal breaker for Qatar and American energy producers. This isn't just a minor adjustment. It's the EU fundamentally rewriting its flagship green legislation because the economic risk became too great. It's a clear signal that when push comes to shove, energy security may trump environmental idealism, and that energy suppliers hold more power than Brussels anticipated. This standoff over gas is about far more than energy. It reveals a fundamental shift in global power that affects everyone. For decades, Europe and the United States could dictate global trade rules. Companies wanted access to wealthy markets. They had to follow Western environmental and labor standards. This gave the West enormous influence over global business practices. But that era is ending. Resource-rich nations like Qatar, along with rising economic powers in Asia, are saying, "We won't just follow rules made in Brussels. We have something you desperately need, energy, and we will use it as leverage to set our own terms." This isn't an isolated event. Across Africa and South America, countries rich in minerals needed for the green transition are demanding better terms and more local control instead of simply accepting Western conditions. The message is clear. The old model, we make the rules, you follow them, is broken. The world is fracturing into multiple power centers, each with its own interests and leverage. Europe's ability to use its market as a tool to spread values is weakening. We are entering a multipolar world where no single power can dictate terms. The global playing field is leveling, and the balance of power is shifting eastward. This gas standoff is more than an energy story. It's a story about power, influence, and a fundamental change in how the world operates. Europe and the West are learning that access to resources, energy, minerals, and other strategic commodities can no longer be taken for granted. Countries with these resources now have leverage, and they are willing to use it. The world is changing. The era where the West could impose rules on everyone else is ending. The balance of power is shifting, and the rules of the global game are being rewritten. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.